evening. The news gang is here, and tonight, from hustlers to dynasties and now demolition squads, the amazing, astounding ways of Kenya's political vocabulary. B for brawl, the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, the story of a sitting MP, and this NCIC list of shame. Also on the show tonight, driving the point home why the MCAs too want a ride. On the kicker tonight, impunity eats its own children. Yvonne takes on the morbid weekend ritual of killing the dead. The punchline has a new report from Gashuri's COVID-19 corruption early warning system, and the angle is a curious look at the new face of the judiciary, or is it? Now, Jamila is away tonight, and our sign language interpreter tonight is Wilson Mushora. Let's begin with that brawl in Kisii.
In the list of shame, we have the name of Mr. Johanna Ngeno and Mr. Mike Sonko. And these two names, we have put them there because of their utterances and their behavior. We also have included the names of the two members of parliament who fought 2 days ago in Kisii, and that is Honorable Arati and Honorable Osoro.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there we are. I don't want to ask who won, but that surely was taking it to quite another level, Francis. We've seen this build-up coming up. I mean, people have been disrupting other people's rallies. We've had politicians talking at each other. But this one really took it up to the next level, and even literally. I mean, someone jumping over the podium and then falling right back down.
It is the season of political bad manners. Unfortunately, it has started very early, with about 17 months to the general election. And it is not a good sign, because if politicians, leaders can do that, then you can imagine what will happen to their supporters. Sounds like a justification of sorts for when their supporters do it, because they'll say, even our MPs, they did the same. However, it is also interesting that previously we've seen politicians inciting their supporters to fight. This time, it is politicians fighting. So that's the slight departure. And maybe it would sound interesting, because at least for the first time, we are not talking about some people who have been killed in Keno, like we saw the other day, or people who have lost their limbs or have shed blood for politicians. It's now politician against politician. Not a good thing, but the quarrel has now moved.
And perhaps they should lock themselves up and finish the fight and then leave us all in peace.
But what is unfortunate is that there's a reason why members of parliament are called honorable members. Why? Because it is expected that by the very function the very office they occupy and the functions they play, representation, law making, oversight, that you would expect honor. Yeah, that's why they're called honorable members. But what we saw in Kisii, there was nothing honorable about two members of parliament fighting. And every so often, there's this misnomer that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, people look at it as the place where corruption is fought, primarily. But it has a very important function to play, making sure that the leadership and integrity chapter in the Constitution is implemented. So, what is ethical about two members of parliament fighting? And when they fight, do they bring honor to the office that they hold? Of course they don't. So that ought to have been a very good place for Twalib Mbarak and his team to focus on, because those two MPs were the clearest example of lack of honor.
And Linus, very bad memories of Kisii. I mean, you remember in 2007, that incident in South Mugirango, which some people later refer to even during the clashes, but generally it's never a good sign when political conversation degenerates into fisticuffs and this kind of thing, where people actually make a point with their fists rather than their brains and mouths.
You know, Joe, it's such an irony that This was South Mugirango again. The incident actually took place in South Mugirango. In 2007, it was the sitting MP, but he was standing at the time. That was, we need to clarify that.
Yeah.
That is Omingo Magara was member of parliament.
He was so upright that actually
he was upright and he ran away, although he was a sitting MP for South Mugirango at the time. And then he was with the deputy president, who was then a member of the ODM team campaigning.
Pentagon, in fact.
And Pentagon. And Mugirango, South Mugirango was home to an ugly incident that was said to have been instigated by the rivalry between ODM and the party of the late Simon Nyachaya, who passed on this week. That's Ford people. And that incident caught the deputy president leaving his shoe in South Mugirango. I hope that was recovered later. But looking at what happened this time, in a week that Kisii is mourning and Kenya is mourning the late Simon Nyachaya, this just tells you how much has changed in terms of the quality of political leadership that we do have. What we saw was so base. I mean, Francis, you define honorable as worthy of honor. And a member of parliament is supposed to be honorable, whether they're in the chambers or outside the chambers. But what we saw there was could not meet the threshold. But there are those who may say that for a long time, Kenyans are being told, oh, these guys won't fight for you. It's you who will fight against each other. These ones went literally for each other. Now, more embarrassing was they did this ostensibly to please their masters who are seated there watching. There was Raila Odinga, who is the party leader of ODM, and there was the deputy president, who is whose ally Osoro is, and both of them just sat there and watched. They watched it, with a calmness with which you watch View Sasa. It's very entertaining, and it was a sad chapter. It was a sad chapter, and I agree with Francis. Is this really an NCIC issue or a police matter that should it be resolved by the OCS South Mugirango, not NCIC in Nairobi? What was cohesion threatening about that incident? It was, in my view, just another pub brawl. And the police should have taken action as to what they would have done if it was just normal members of the public that were acting that way.
And it's interesting you mentioned the two the dramatis personae, as I said, the two people who are seated there. I mean, these people are supposedly doing this on their behalf, or at least in their name, or in the belief that this would actually either make them happy or serve their interests. And they were there, and there is no evidence, at least from everything I have seen, that they, went up there when their turn came, because these people did this before the leaders spoke. One would have imagined that they would go there and, in no uncertain terms, condemn this thing and say, well, you know what, this is not what I stand for. You're not doing that for me. You are doing it for yourself. Because I insist that would send a very powerful message when you look at how these politicians behave lately, thinking that they're doing a favor for someone by insulting the next guy. And I think that would have been very powerful if these two leaders at least were united on that one thing, which everybody says should have been condemned by any right-thinking member of society. But Yvonne, there was then almost like this ping pong thing going on, and up to now, quite frankly, Kenyans are very confused about who exactly they can turn to when these things desecrate basically our TV screens and all manner of things going on in the country. Social media was awash with that image. Isn't that something that we don't discuss enough in this country. This event will kind of just pass. Next time we'll be talking about something. Right now we're talking about Sonko in Gigiri, and we'll just move on and talk about the next.
Just to follow up on what you said, was there outright condemnation? Even the following day, we saw both the deputy president the following day at yet another event. We didn't see some strong condemnation of that. We saw an interview again by the ODM party leader. There is no strong condemnation
Actually,
of that
today,
event.
today, the ODM leader was saying that he disagrees with
that it was not the same.
What NCIC
whatever happened
said,
was not the same.
The two members of parliament should not have shared equal blame, that there was an aggressor and a victim.
And you know what they're going to say. In fact, I think, did he mention the fact that there was this man who walked up to the stage? That would be Sylvanus Osoro. What was he going? He was going to look for a fight. And that is what is interesting for me. Two things. One, who is responsible for what happened here? It's been, when did this happen? On Sunday? It's now almost 5 days.
Tuesday or thereabout.
Yes, it's been almost 5 days since this incident. Have the police questioned them? Has the DPP intervened? The NCIC comes up with a list of shame. And I dare say here, for two people who had no shame to fight at a funeral when a body and a corpse is lying right in front of them, do you think a list of shame makes them any more ashamed?
So the
for
only
people who have no shame,
punishment for this shameless people is to shame them.
Is to shame them, surely. For people who have absolutely nothing to lose when it comes to honor following that incident. But I also wanted to add, some unfortunate things. These are young members of parliament who are supposed to be leading the way, trying to show us which way we are going forward. The youth are the leaders of tomorrow. This was a bad show. But also another thing, it is a harbinger of things to come. It is post-election violence and other things like that begin this way. They begin with Raila Odinga going to Githurai and being pelted with stones. And then it is followed by what happened thereafter. I think when it was in Bama Market. That's what happens. And then you have a funeral where two people are literally throwing punches on the platform. It builds up slowly in this way. Not only that, but the ghosts of the 2007-2008 post-election violence were actually raised at this funeral. In fact, I believe those are the sentiments that led to this fight. With Arati saying what he said about 2007, what happened between the Kisiis and the Kalenjin,
and sort of linking
the deputy president to that issue. And you see, it is brought up in this very callous manner. It is brought up, not in a bid to, I don't know what the merits of that are, but not in a way to raise
and
this
in the
issue
most
that must be in the most inappropriate settings. And so this is how it builds up very slowly. So what's happening right now, I don't know. What did the Kalenjins feel about what was said there? What did the Kisiis feel about these issues being raised? It's raised in an irresponsible manner, and it can only be the build-up to what has already been made to be a high-stakes election in 2022, with all of these things that are happening now. And that's what I just find interesting. But the list of shame, for what? It seems like a list of noisemakers in a classroom where the person who's writing the noisemakers can do nothing about it, then present it to the teacher. The teacher himself, as we heard from the president today, says, this is a shame. But I wonder whether this is something about a tone that has been set from the top.
Unfortunately, I think beyond the list of shame, what we've also been hearing for the first time in a long time is some form of sanctions. I think we woke up to headlines today of a flurry of activities within government, including the Ministry of Interior, with the argument and the Parliamentary Committee on National Security. Yeah. They're not thinking of introducing sanctions, that leaders involved or associated with violence should be removed from leadership or be prevented from running for office. Now, when it goes to that, then it becomes a real sanction. I want to give a very bad example, but one that has really worked. Trump is off Twitter and YouTube.
Off everything, including Pinterest.
Off everything.
All he's left with is fake news.
I think
what he used to call
literally.
Yes. This is a sanction that can punish a politician so much. But then again, you also hear conversations about us, the media. Do we make things worse than they ought to be? Do we help matters? And I think some valid points have been made about the airtime that still goes to some of these politicians. The acres of pages on newspapers that they still get, could it be fueling some of these bad manners?
And that's an interesting internal conversation that perhaps we need to have as the media. But Francis, there was a time when the NCIC would summon people. I remember people like Ali Okwara, even though nothing much came out of it. I think someone apologized. Moses Kurian, I think, was also in there at some point. And then this time, what we see is a list of shame, because I think there's a sense in which being summoned to explain, even if nothing much happens, it brings a certain degree of accountability that, I mean, come on, just explain what is that you were trying to do, what is that you were saying, and that sort of brings the reality home that there are actually institutions that can bring you to account. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the NCIC can actually
and perhaps that would be the first thing to do before issuing a list of shame.
Prosecutorial powers per se, but can actually take you to court, almost in a manner of speaking, sue you for matters of that nature. And I think that's something that we haven't seen enough of. And I think as long as impunity and all of these things that the politicians do remain that, where it's not expensive to insult people and cause brawls in those settings, people will keep doing them.
Unfortunately, and I think history and record can bail me out. One of the reasons why the National Cohesion and Integration Commission was established 10 years ago or thereabout was to handle this kind of scenarios. It's a commission, a constitutional commission. The commissioners there enjoy security of tenure. So they are expected to make independent decisions that are binding, decisions that are serious, in such a way that they deter anyone from behaving in a certain manner. But what do we see? A slap on the list. Look, I don't remember anyone, and probably you guys can remind me of any politician, anyone who have been successfully prosecuted for political violence or for incitement. All we hear are warnings, people admitting and saying we will do this and that, but no consequences per se, in such a way that one would say so and so did this and this is the punishment. Right. No one. Maybe a few days in remand, and thereafter some cash bail. Yeah,
you remind me of the Pangani 6.
Yeah.
Remember?
Very
and
little,
even that was, and then they came out and made jokes about it. Yeah.
Very little happens, and this is what encourages this kind of impunity that we see, because after all, even if you fight, even if you incite, very little is going to happen to you, and that is the situation that we are in, unfortunately.
Now, one of the people, Yvonne, who have been caught up in this, the list of shame, is Mike Mbuvi Sonko, the impeached governor. I don't know whether that makes sense. Impeached governor. Well, he used to be the governor. Now he's been impeached. Ex-governor of Nairobi. And, he's in court now with terror charges, no less. But the fact that he is in some form of tribulation right now, from where you sit, I don't know what you see.
Interesting. I think I'd just sort of like to go through the affidavit that was provided by the DCI. Some very serious allegations that they have stated against the ex-governor of Nairobi. They say that he has started arming his private security agents with full military attire. The suspect was in company of unknown persons, had worn militia attire together with suspects. They talk about coded signals that portray that the militia are ready and that they will be armed to create a threat to the stability of the country. They also talk about intelligence information that he is connected to financing terrorism activities and is in the advanced stage of procuring arms and ammunition using a wide syndicate which is complex and sophisticated. And they also talk about his social media accounts, which have a huge following, using his influence to facilitate intended attacks. Now, these are some rather serious allegations, and this is just the one. Remember last week he was arrested and charged for armed robbery, or was it robbery with violence over an incident that took place?
Assault and causing grievous bodily harm.
That's
was
right.
assault.
From a 2019 incident, I
In
believe,
Buruburu.
in Buruburu, and now asking for him to be detained in 30 days. I mean, take a look at the footage on the screen. He's being treated like a top terror suspect. This is what we see with the ATPU doing that sort of thing. And for what it's worth, we don't know whether these charges will stick, whether they are indeed based on fact. The court will decide, but it's rather interesting that it comes after a time when Sonko spilled his guts, talked about what he had supposedly done or not done, in the previous one.
He's been talking quite a bit.
He's been talking quite a bit. And really, I think this is about maybe impunity coming back, and it's interesting. I mean, we'll talk about other politicians who have suddenly come to their Jesus moment and are revealing everything that they supposedly did. But this will be interesting to see where these charges go. They're very serious charges that we've seen only, talking about him being a threat to the stability of the nation. That's interesting.
And I mean, one just hopes that this is the beginning of across-the-board kind of scrutiny of what people are doing. I mean, if there's anything in what they are saying that actually, they'll be looking around for, because I think one of the things that have happened in this country that often startles people is when things appear to be politically motivated and then probably stops with that one person and you don't see it, because there are many things that are happening even with politicians, very many things that one could look into. So I think that it would be great, Linus, if this would be this broom that sweeps across the board and we see what's been going on. I mean, obviously the courts will have to render their own impressions of what this is about.
Yeah, Joe, politics has always been the biggest impediment to that broom you are talking about. And you will see it play out even in this case of Mike Sonko. When you listen to his defense team, they are questioning the timing. When you listen to some of the observers and analysts, they're asking, why wasn't he arrested in 2019 when he committed the alleged assault? When did he wear this uniform? We've seen his style since 2013. It's been that kind of very interesting style of dressing. The president himself on tape there referred to goggles and all that. Now the military attire surfaces in court papers. The problem is the politicization of justice in Kenya. Mm-hmm. And that is likely to be seen as a discussion point in the Sonko case. Because the question will be raised, is it an offense just because he is politically incorrect? If you look at the preceding events, first of all, there is no defending Sonko in terms of the quality of his verbal discourse. He is a sharp tongue. He is a loose tongue. He said very, very insulting things to the president the other day, playing that clip
in a rally.
In a rally,
Machakos County.
In Machakos County. But also, you would see that a few weeks, or is it a week before that, we had the Interior Principal Secretary going to the DCI to complain about what Sonko said about the 2017 election. And then a paper surfaced in court of assault, and none of them involve or about the incident that was complained about. So did those events trigger the charging of Mike Sonko? If they did, then this is part of the continued failure in the administration of justice in Kenya. Now, when are we waiting to charge Simba Arati and Osoro? This could surface at some point that this was an incident that the police should pick up. We need to delink the politics and the justice system, but will we do that? Nobody knows.
Moses Kuria, very ambitious here, says the law in this sphere is defective. What we need is self-regulation. Politicians should meet and agree they will behave in a civil, nationalistic way. I'm happy to lead that process, he says.
Moses is a customer in this business. Remember, he was part of the Pangani 6. But
he saw the burning bush.
Yeah, but probably he has a point. He has a point in the sense that, I mean,
if only it could happen.
If only this could be done, we probably would see some positive movement in this direction if the politicians were serious about it. But will they? most of them will probably not. Why? Because unfortunately, this kind of conduct is also political currency. I mean, I've covered many rallies, many political rallies, and not just the politicians, even ordinary citizens. The most insulting, the most vulgar of the politicians is the one that always attracts the loudest cheers and attraction. And you will see even in a rally, people will say, we want so-and-so to speak. Before so-and-so speaks, they will not allow that rally to end. Yeah. Some of the things that we show on TV are the very, very distilled and refined of the statements that you see in political rallies. And that also explains why sometimes it is very dangerous to cover some of these rallies live. If we were to do, Kenyans would be very shocked.
We just don't publish our list of shame, but we have it.
We have
people
actually,
that if you know they are going to speak, you can't put it
this way. There are some politicians. There are some politicians
we
today.
Never put live.
If you're having a live coverage, you know, if so and so is on the podium, start doing commentary.
Something else,
Start doing commentary because they are likely to say something very inciting. And it's a trend that is unfortunate. For Sonko, one would ask, what is the motive? Because he's obviously not the most likable of politicians among some people, and he's also likable among some people. There's some things that he has said that are very nasty about the president, about a few other leaders that are very, very nasty. But be it as it may, there is the question of rule of law and fair administrative justice. Politics and justice cannot go hand in hand. So charge him and prosecute him in the legal way using the laid down legal procedures. But don't politicize. If you politicize, then it becomes a different ball game altogether. Unfortunately, if the motive is politics, even those charges that you see may not go anywhere. And maybe over a period of time, once probably the political scenario has settled, you will realize that
you know you are a decent man, so you are assuming that the idea is for them to go somewhere. But that is a story for another day. Shall we go to Sagana now?
Yes. We're due for a break?
Okay. Then we can go to Sagana after the break.